Hi everyone, welcome to the channel Sluggers Blue for your cat VRC preparation. Today we'll be continuing with the RC that we had started in the first part where I explained it to you the passage. The RC is the same, the anarchists and their precursors as I've titled it. This was asked in your CAT exam in the year 2020 in the first lot. And yeah, so this is the part where we'll discuss the questions. Okay, we've already gone through the passage in detail in the first part. Okay, now for those of you who are watching, who might be watching one of these videos for the first time, I'll briefly explain to you the structure of these sessions of this course. Okay, so now guys, every single session caters to one RC, one reading comprehension, and is in turn split into two parts. The first part of the session is where I explain to you the passage of the RC in detail, and the second part of the session is where I take you through the questions of the RC. Okay, and yeah, so and 40 such sessions make up a course. 40 of these sessions make up a course which is titled as an anthology of RCs, which is directed towards your reading comprehension preparation for the CAT. All right, the current video that you're watching is the second part of this session, which caters to this particular RC. All right, so let's move on to the questions then. Question number one. The author believes that the new ruling class of politicians betrayed the principles of the French Revolution, but does not specify in what way. In the context of the passage, which statement below is the likeliest explanation of that betrayal? So this betrayal has been talked about by the author in the third paragraph, where he says that workers and peasants were inevitably betrayed by the new class of politicians whose first priority was to re-establish a centralized state power, right? So the same centralized state power that the workers and peasants and they all had, rebelled against. So because it was tyrannical and exploitative, etc. So once the revolution was over, the new class of politicians went on to reinstate the same type of centralized state power which they had rebelled against, right? So that's the betrayal part that the author refers to. So let's, in light of this point of reference, let's look at the options. First one says the new ruling class was constituted mainly of anarchists who were against the destructive impact of the revolution on the market. No, this option is so distorted it almost borders on being comical. And see, guys, the author has talked about the point of view of anarchists with respect to centralized state powers, and but nowhere has the author hinted or implied or stated that the anarchists were involved directly as part of the narrative of the French Revolution. He doesn't. He doesn't. The discussion of anarchists is being undertaken as part of the analysis of the passage, as part of the analysis of the situation, as part of the analysis of what happened during and after the French Revolution. It's not that the anarchists were themselves involved as being part of the ruling class or were somehow involved in the historical events. And be that as it may, even if that may have been the case, the author hasn't stated that anywhere in the passage, and we cannot make that assumption. So this definitely will be eliminated on accounts of that. Also, destructive, the anarchists who were against the destructive impact of the revolution. The author hasn't talked about the destructive impact of the revolution. And then, moreover, where does the market come in? The author's concern is with society and with governance, not with market. So there's so much in the option that makes it a perfect candidate for a strong elimination. Okay, so let's come to the next option. It says the anarchists did not want a new ruling class, but were not politically strong enough to stop them. And this explains the betrayal of the anarchists not wanting a new ruling class. So okay, fair enough. So we can at least say that this idea is in line with what the author has tried to convey, that the anarchists would not want, hypothetically speaking, a new ruling class. Did not want seems to imply that you had some anarchists present present there in the context after the French Revolution, and they did not want the new ruling class. But because they were, again, so this option has also made these anarchists as part of the historical narrative, which is something that the author has not done. The discussion, again, guys, I'm reiterating again the same point. The discussion relating to anarchists is part of the analysis. The discussion related to anarchism is part of the analysis. Anarchists were not involved in the historical narrative, at least so far as the author has talked about it. Okay, So again, this is a distortion, but we're not politically strong enough. Nowhere does the authors talk about their political strength or lack of the same. So again, you eliminate this with a capital E. Coming to option C, the new ruling class struck a deal with the old ruling class to share power between them. It's almost like the question setter wanted to add, lighten the attempting atmosphere for the students while they were attending the CAD, just to lighten the mood. That's so comical. This option is new ruling class having struck a deal with the old ruling class. Nowhere does the author mention that. So, yeah, definitely not the answer. You can eliminate this with a capital E. Next one, option D, the new ruling class rose to power on the strength of the workers' revolutionary anger, okay, but then turned to oppress that very class. Now, please read this particular point of reference. After every revolutionary uprising, usually won at a heavy cost for ordinary populations. This is the part that warrants what this option says. That they rose to power on the strength of the workers' revolutionary anger, right? Every revolutionary uprising, which was usually won at a heavy cost for ordinary populations of the workers, right? They won because of this. The uprising won because of this, and then the new rulers had no hesitation. Even after that, they had no hesitation in applying violence and terror and so on and so forth to maintain their control over the population. The same. That's exactly what the author, what option D has paraphrased. It says the new ruling class rose to power on the strength of the workers' revolutionary anger, but then turned to oppress that very same class. That's correct. That's absolutely correct and on point. So your correct answer will be option D. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, so question number two. Which one of the following best expresses the similarity between American individualist anarchists and free market liberals, as well as the difference between the former and the latter? Right. So the point of reference that is relevant for this is the last few lines of the last paragraph, where the author talks about these American individualist anarchists and the market liberals. And then we also noted this or understood this part by using the schematic, right, in the passage explainer. So yeah, so let's quickly go through this part and understand what exactly the author wanted to say here, and then assess the options in the backdrop of the same. So the point of reference says that another tradition of individualist anarchism from a remarkable series of 19th century American figures. So that is a reference to the American individualist anarchists. Uh, who argued that in protecting our autonomy, so that their point of view is that in protecting our autonomy, okay, and associating with others for common advantages and associating with others for common advantages, mutual advantages. By doing this, we are promoting the good for all. So there are two points that they are making, right? There's one point about autonomy. There's another point about association for common advantages, association with others for common advantages. So by ensuring these two, we ensure the good for all. That's the point of view of the American individualist anarchists. And then the author finds it necessary to, after mentioning this point of view of theirs, to show that their point of view, but that there is something with this on account of which they do differ from market liberals. Just because they believe in autonomy and some mutual cooperation does not mean that they are the same as the market liberals, and they do differ from the market liberals in a certain respect. And he says, he has the sentence that these thinkers differed from free market liberals. So although so from that we can infer that although some aspects of these points might be similar to what the market liberals believe, probably the autonomy part, so far as these thinkers are concerned, but they do differ from the free market liberals in their absolute mistrust of American capitalism. But where they do differ from the market liberals is in their absolute mistrust of the American capitalism. So they don't believe in that, while the market liberals probably do, right? And then instead of a trust in American capitalism, these thinkers rather believe in an idea of mutualism, right? Their emphasis is more on mutualism than American capitalism, while in case of the market liberals, it's more on American capitalism. Okay. Now, so the commonality might be about the autonomy or maybe some cooperation, but the difference is in terms of their belief in their differential belief in American capitalism or mutualism. Okay. So in that backdrop, let's assess the options. The first one says both reject the regulatory power of the state, but the former favor of people's state, while the later favor a state intervention in the markets. Both reject both of these reject the regulatory power of the state. So yes, these American thinkers, anarchists, do reject the power of the state. That's fair. Market liberals reject the regulatory power of the state completely. Okay, it's not, we can't consider it to be absolutely correct, but yes, they would usually be inclined towards not having the state regulate the markets. So all right, but that's the most salient problem with this option is in the later part, which says, but the former favors a people state. That means they favor the people state. That even that's okay, but this part is definitely incorrect. While the latter, that means the market liberals favor state intervention in markets. So no, this is incorrect. And moreover, on one hand, they this sentence, this last sentence in the first part of the option seems to be self-contradictory, right? First, it says that market liberals reject the regulatory power of the state, and then it says that they are in favor of state intervention in the markets. So that's right. So it's the option itself is self-contradictory, and even if it were not, this later part is definitely incorrect, right? So you can eliminate this with a capital E. Coming to option B, it says both prioritize individual autonomy. So yes, that seems all right. These thinkers did prioritize individual autonomy, and we have already inferred that market liberals would also prioritize individual autonomy. But the former, that means the individualist anarchist thinkers, these thinkers, are also emphasize mutual dependence, while the later do not do so. But the former also emphasize mutual dependence. So mutual dependence can be considered as a paraphrase term for mutualism. So yes, so that does make sense. They do emphasize mutual dependence, while the later do not do so. So yeah, we can probably infer that the later don't, at least don't emphasize. And the option doesn't say that they oppose, it just says that they don't emphasize, and that's true. According to the passage, they haven't emphasized mutualism. It's just all you can infer about market liberals is that they do support American capitalism. But, so yeah, so this might be the correct answer. We will mark it as the smallest case, weak selection, and move on to the next one. Option C. Both are sophisticated arguments for capitalism, but the former argue for a morally upright capitalism, while the later argue that the market is the only morality. As much as we might be inclined to believe that yes, market liberals might in fact be inclined to argue that market is the only morality, but still the first part where it says, where this implies that even the individualist anarchist stream of thought is basically a case for sophisticated capitalism or morally upright capitalism, that's something that can definitely not be inferred. Nowhere has it been stated, hinted, or from or can be has been implied by the author that this school of thought is just a case of sophisticated capitalism. The author doesn't say that. Like he has, and we also, just from this autonomy and the mutual cooperation part, this is not enough to infer that there is an element of capitalism involved here. So, right. So yeah. So this week we'll definitely mark this as a small e slash capital E scenario. Small e is weak selection, capital E is strong selection. So what that means is that this option is eliminated, but it is not as strongly eliminated as option A, right? So for those of you who are like not familiar with these markings, you might want to watch some of the theory sessions of RCs. Okay, coming to the last option. Both are founded on the moral principles of altruism, but the latter conceive of the market as a force too mystical for the former to comprehend. So many problems with this option. Moral principles of altruism. Nowhere has the author implied, or can we infer from that market liberalism is founded on the moral principles of altruism. Free market liberals philosophy is founded on the moral principles of altruism. We cannot infer that from the passage. And secondly, and more importantly, the market liberals, they say that the latter conceive of the market as a force too mystical for the former to comprehend. This option seems to imply that the market liberals have made a comment with respect to the American individualist thinkers, right? American individualist anarchist thinkers, and the comment is that, well, that the market force is too mystical for them to understand. No, it is the author who's making the comments, or making the notes or observations with respect to these thinkers, their point of views, and the point of view of the market liberals. The market liberals themselves have made no comments or nothing directly from their point of view has been pointed out in the passage. So you can also eliminate this option quite easily. Okay, so your correct answer here, guys, will obviously be option B. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Question 3. The author makes all of the following arguments in the passage except. So that means we have a triple TF scenario here. Triple TF means there will be three statements which will be true as per the passage, and there'll be one statement which will not be true as per the passage, and that's the statement that will be your answer. Okay. It is always helpful to just at least take a mental note of this whenever you have the word except in the question stem. Okay. So let's start assessing the options. The failure of the French Revolution was because of its betrayal by the new class of politicians who emerged from it. Okay, failure of French Revolution was because of its betrayal by the new class of politicians who emerged from it. So yes, the author has talked about this. He says that in this point of reference, that what went wrong with the French Revolution that followed the ultimate outcome of the French Revolution was it had ended not only the reign of terror and the emergence of a newly rich ruling class, but with a new adored emperor. So he talks about this, and he also goes into the detail of that, and how as to how this new class of politicians, how they betrayed the workers and the peasants and the population who fought alongside them, right, during the revolution. So yes, this is something that this is an argument that we can consider that the author has made, not so directly, but as part of the first, second, and third paragraph, uh, right? So this will be a true case. So and hence can be eliminated. Option B, the popular perception of anarchism is espousing lawlessness and violence, as espousing lawlessness and violence comes from a mainstream mistrust of collectivism. Now, the author has said something about the negative perception of anarchism, right? In the first part, he says the word anarchy comes from the Greek word anarchia, meaning contrary to authority or without a ruler, and was used in a derogatory sense. Derogatory sense means with a negative connotation, right? Until this, but the author hasn't said anything about the later part, that why is it being used in a derogatory sense, which the option mentions that this derogatory sense or this popular perception of anarchism as espousing lawlessness and violence comes from a mainstream mistrust of collectivism. Okay, and also he also hasn't really talked about espousing lawlessness and espousing violence, right? These are all parts that the aspects of this option that the author hasn't mentioned anywhere. Neither can they be very directly inferred. Maybe you can infer to some extent the lawlessness part, but again, like that requires some stretch of a leap, and you can definitely not infer anything about violence, and nothing at all about this part, mainstream mistrust of collectivism. So this is definitely false and not mentioned in the passage. So this can in fact be your answer. Okay, let's look at the next option. Individualist anarchism is actually constituted of many streams, all of which focus on the autonomy of the individual. Now, the point of reference for this is here. The authors has said in the last paragraph that there are unsurprisingly several traditions of individualist anarchism. Okay, so yes, the first part makes sense. Individualist anarchism is constituted of many streams, and one of them deriving from blah 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 blah, and another from etc etc etc, which says that in protecting our economy and associating with our others for common advantages, we are promoting the good of all. So the first part of the option does check out. We can like individualist anarchism is actually constituted of many streams. Fair enough. But the later part, which says all of which, especially the all of which part, focus on the autonomy of the individual. The author has mentioned just two streams here, and even out of those two streams, only for the second one has he pointed out something related to the focus on autonomy of the individual, right? The all of which part is certainly something that we cannot infer, or we can say that the author has made an argument about in the passage. So, and that's why we are in a slightly tricky scenario here, because Even this cannot be, this is also not completely incorrect. So we're just going to keep this option for on hold right now, and then we'll assess option B and C together towards the end. Okay, I'm just going to not going to mark this either true or false, because we will assess it once more once we are done with option B. Let's come to the next one. Option D says, for anarchists, the state is the enemy because all states apply violence and terror to maintain their control. Yes, this is something quite clearly that has been mentioned in the passage. He says that yes, the new rulers have no hesitation in applying violence and terror, a secret police and a professional army to maintain their control. And this is the reason why, so it's not exactly stated word by word, I know, verbatim, but this is something that can be inferred. The author has made this argument that, and hence the anarchists hate consider the states itself to be the enemy, right? So yes, this can be inferred and can be considered true, and hence can be eliminated very easily. Okay, so guys, see, now this is a scenario that you might often come across in questions, in RC questions, be it CAT, be it that, or any other entrance examination, where two options are pretty close, and then that's what we have here. In the first option, the problems are relating to the parts espousing lawlessness, espousing violence, and a mainstream of mistrust of collectivism. And the second option, the problem is with this part mainly, all of which, right? And then we are supposed to select the one which has committed more of an error, because we are supposed to select the false option, right? So, so in such scenarios, well, there's no way. I think, at least in my opinion, the all of which part makes sense. You know, it definitely renders option C incorrect. But so far as the relative correctness of these options is concerned, option C is still less distorted than option B. Option B certainly, option C has just one element which is uh, unwarranted, the all of which part. Option B, on the other hand, has three of them: violence, espousing lawlessness, and a mainstream mistrust of collectivism. So in this case, definitely, so far as relative judgment is concerned between B and C, C can be considered to be relatively less incorrect and relatively in line with the passage, and hence hence can be eliminated, at least with a small e, if not a capital E, and hence your answer will be, in fact, option B for this. Okay, and then guys, see, this is a scenario that you might eventually, as you're practicing, maybe in your walks, or maybe as even on your D day, on the day of CAT, you might just experience this. So you have to be prepared for these kind of scenarios. Okay, all right, let's move on to the next question. Question 4. According to the passage, what is the one idea that is common to all forms of anarchism? Okay, so the different forms of anarchism that have been mentioned in the passage are these. First was anarchist communism, then collectivist anarchism, and then finally the author talks about several strands of individualist anarchism, right? So, and then all the discussion about the various streams of anarchism has been done in the later part of the passage. In the earlier part, the author has talked about the idea of anarchism in general. Okay, he has talked about the various strands and the variants in the later part. All right, so let's assess the options. We need to look for that one idea that is common to all of them. Okay, the first one says there is no common idea common to all forms of anarchism. That is why it is anarchic. No, guys, anarchism is like what the option has done is it has made the idea of anarchism refer to itself. It is not a self-referential idea. Nowhere has the author implied that is the self-referential idea, which says that, which basically demonstrates that there is no common idea. It can be anything random, and that's why it's anarchic. No, the author hasn't done that, and it cannot be inferred from anywhere in the passage. Again, a comical option. So option E can be eliminated. Option B, they all derive from the work of Pierre Joseph Proudhon. The author has said, in fact, at the start that, yeah, the word anarchy it was until before 1840, it used to have a derogatory sense. It used to contain it was used in a derogatory sense, and then it was adopted by Pierre Joseph Proudhon. But the author hasn't been very clear. In fact, at least so far as the strands of anarchism are concerned, it's something that we cannot infer that if these strands were derived from the work of Pierre Joseph Proudhon, like there's just it is maybe it might be probable, but we don't have enough information. Like we don't necessarily know that there was no other luminary, like, or maybe some political philosopher who came somewhere after Pierre Joseph Proudhon, and who ended up who was responsible for deriving some of these uh, variants of anarchism, right? Or if there was or if there wasn't, right? The author hasn't been very clear about it. All he has said is that before this year, anarchy word was used in a derogatory sense, and after that, it was adopted by Pierre Joseph Proudhon. So, no, we can't necessarily say that. Okay, so we're going to mark this as capital E and move on to the next option. They are all opposed to the centralization of power in the state. Yes. In fact, this is the point that the author mentions here at this in the fourth paragraph, well before he starts the discussion on the variants of anarchism, right? So that means he's mentioned this point that for anarchists, and when he says anarchists, he's using the word in a general sense. That means for all types of anarchists, the state itself is the enemy. So yes, you can infer that like all forms of anarchism are opposed to the centralization of power in the state. So yes, this can be an answer, and then like we have substantial evidence for this as opposed to option B. See, guys, I still understand that some of you may have made the mistake of inferring that okay, maybe Pierre Joseph Proudhon was the person who founded this ideology, and then that is an assumption that we are making here, and then hence anything else that comes from the ideology that comes as a variant of anarchism must be based on this. So I see the logic that you're coming that you applied there, but the point I made with respect to option B was that we don't have enough evidence to make those inferences. Okay, and hence at least at least would definitely look for better options. Okay, and in this case we have found one. C is definitely incorrect. There's substantial evidence for this to be considered as the correct option. Let's look at the last one. They all focus on the primacy of the power of the individual. Yeah, so the author has said, at least so far as individual anarchism is concerned, he has talked about autonomy. But so far as anarchist communism and collectivist anarchism is concerned, he doesn't say so much about the primacy of the power of the individual. And even if he may have, we don't know if that will apply to all forms, right? However, in the case of option C, the opposition to centralization of power can be inferred to be applying to all forms because it has been that point has been mentioned when the idea of anarchism and anarchist was being discussed in general, right? And when it is being discussed in general, it's a very it's right to infer. It's uh, it's not objectionable to infer that it will be something that will apply to all forms of anarchism. And hence your correct answer, guys, will be option C. Option D will also get eliminated quite easily. Let's go to the next question. Okay, the last question. Of the following sets of concepts, identify the set that is conceptually closest to the concerns of the passage. Okay, so guys, these are the kind of questions which require you to, which basically test how well you have been able to decipher the core points of the passage from the peripheral points, right? As we've discussed in the prior sessions, that not everything that the author talks about is core to the argument that he might be trying to make, right? There are certain points that he definitely wants to make. There's a certain message that he wants to convey, and there are other parts of the passage which act as supporting pillars or substantiating examples or maybe substantiating arguments for making that core point, right? And those points are what we call the peripheral points. So these kind of options basically assess the the reader's ability to differentiate between what was the author's core point and what were the points which he used to just substantiate his core point, right? Peripheral points. Okay, so let's see which of these. Let's check the options. The first one says revolution, state, strike, egoism. Okay, so okay, all right. So guys, in these cases, it is always useful to look at the options in parallel, right? For example, if you look at the just at the first terms, right? In this case, you have revolution. The first two options you have revolution. The second two options you have anarchism. We would definitely prefer anarchism out of these two, right? Because the passage is not so much about revolution, but it mainly revolves about the idea of anarchism. And then that's what he has done. He talks about, he introduces the idea here, then he talks about the historical issues due to which the idea arises in the second paragraph, and then he describes those issues in detail. So we can, like, It's more about anarchism than it is about revolution. So that definitely makes a bad case for option A and B, right? So we have two positives. We have positives, one positive at least for the option C and D. Let's look at the second part: state, and betrayal. Now, so far as the second part is concerned, state, yes, the author has talked about state, how anarchism is about opposing the state, or being against the state, or at least how state centralized power at the state level has, sorry, not state level, how centralized power of the state usually turns exploitative in nature, or at least in the historical context used to. So yes, state matches, but also betrayal is also not incorrect here, because the author has talked about betrayal by the new class of politicians in this part, right? So far as the second term is concerned, I think all of the terms can be considered correct. Okay, so I'm gonna mark tick for all of them. Let's consider the third term: strike, protection, individual, and power. Strike. See, guys, actually, the first term was substantial enough, was enough for us to eliminate the first two options, but still, I'm gonna check all the terms. Okay, so we're doing that. Okay, coming to the third term, strike, protection, individual power. Strike. No, the author hasn't talked about strike here, right? No, strike doesn't make sense. Protection. Protection of what? The protection of the rights of the workers and the peasants. No, like that's like you'll have to do it, like the author hasn't talked about it in terms of protection here, right? So that definitely doesn't seem like very quite so correct. So individual, yes, the author has emphasized on individual towards the later part, right? The anarchist idea does emphasize. He has talked about uh, autonomy. He has talked about in the later parts. He talks about how various streams of anarchism, they do have at least some elements which focus on individualism. So individual can make sense. It's not very objectionable. Power, betrayal, then power. The author has talked about power. No, the author hasn't talked about power in the later. Okay, so power has been talked about with betrayal, right? Like the new rulers, they exercise power, the new ruling class exercises power and hence betrays. So like these two are so close together that it doesn't make sense to first cover betrayal and then from the same point of reference take another term, right? You'd rather want to use this term to cover something that has been covered in the later part. So yes, so we might have some so far as strike is concerned, that definitely an objection. Production, yes, we do have some objection here. uh, and individual, no, individual works can work. Power, some observation, or if at all you can put it on hold if you don't feel very confident about it, although it again it does come from the same part. So it does make a good case for eliminating this. We are more on the side of eliminating this than selecting, so we'll just mark it as a hold and across. Okay, and let's come to the last part. It says egoism, liberals. See, by this point, we can easily eliminate A and B, the two terms which are already incorrect. Egoism is the word egoism has put a negative connotation to the term of related to autonomy, so that's definitely incorrect. Liberals, it's not about liberals. And the market liberals part is just a comparison that has been mentioned here for comparison, uh, for the sake of comparison, right? So for the American figures who espoused certain traditions of individualist anarchism, right? So, yeah, liberals would be incorrect here. Freedom, yeah, freedom can be correct. Freedom does make sense. He has talked about autonomy here, so freedom does make sense. State, no, the author hasn't said so much about state towards the end of the paragraph. So again, it does not make sense, and hence your correct answer, as we can clearly see, will be option C. Okay, so that's about the questions. Let's move on to the next part. Okay, coming to the vocabulary section, the way we'll go about this is you have been provided the passage along with some highlighted words, which I figured some of you may have found challenging. And on the right side, the meaning of those respective words. So you can check the word in its context as part of its sentence, and then check, refer to its meaning to get a better understanding of that. Now, the meanings provided here are primarily I've tried to keep them contextual. The general meaning of a word and its contextual meaning are usually the same, but in cases where there might have been a slight difference, we have stuck with the contextual meaning. Okay, and the way you'll want to go about this is pause the video and go for it, because I'm not going to go through. I don't plan to go through each and every word here, because we'll anyways have other separate vocabulary sessions or courses to take care of vocabulary. All right. So, all right, guys. So let's start with the analysis and reading section of the video. So, starting with the analysis, RC analysis first. The genre for this RC is here. Now, for those of you who might have faced difficulty in the topic of the RC with respect to the topic of the RC, the ideas discussed, or maybe even the terminology of the RC, you would definitely benefit from reading more content from the same genre. The readability of the RC, or not the RC, the passage. Okay, the readability is just of the passage, right? So it basically shows you how difficult or easy the passage was to comprehend. It has been scored out of 10. It is based on a variant of Fleshkin CAD grade level scale, that is the most ubiquitously used readability scale across various types of text. So it is quite reliable. So it is based on the variant of this. So from this, you can gauge how readable or easy or difficult to comprehend the passage was. Next, the length of the passage is also provided here. I would suggest that you better the parameter that you should use for understanding or for checking the length of passage should not be just the number of words, but rather number of words that you are required to read for answering for every question that you need to answer, right? So and which for cat RCs is usually around 100 words per question, plus minus 15 to 20% sometimes. So you can take this as a benchmark and compare how lengthy or not so lengthy this passage was, and accordingly incorporate steps in your strategy to address if you faced issues in terms of because of the passage length. Coming to the last part of the analysis, ideal time to solve the RC is the total time is listed here. Time required that you should have taken up while reading the passage should have been less than this, and for questions should have been less than this, and this is the overall total, right? So yeah, so that's the ideal time. Finally, suggested readings for this based on this RC, based on this genre, and based on this RC. A couple of articles have been picked up, which the title and the author and the platform where they are available have been provided here, and the links to these articles are provided in the description of the this YouTube video. Okay, so you can check out those articles and read those, go through those to get some more exposure in this genre and in this topic. Okay, so that completes the reading and analysis part of this section of this session. Okay, guys, so with this, we have started the next genre, that is politics and governance. This was the first passage that we solved here. And for those of you who have not watched or solved the other passages of the last two genres, that is economics and management and cultural and social sciences, you can do so by going to the course page of the channel, an anthology of RCs, and you can attempt the RCs first from the description of the YouTube videos, and then watch the videos for the explanation of the RCs and the questions. Okay, all right. Okay, guys, so with this, we have come to the conclusion of the session. Now, for those of you who have not watched the first part of this particular RC, this particular session, you can click here on this card and it will take you on this video, and it will take you to the first part where you can go through the passage explainer to understand the passage in detail. And for those of you who want to watch the intro video of the course, you can click on this card here. It will take you to the intro video of the course. And for those and others again, and definitely if you like the session, do share it with others who might find it helpful and useful, and definitely do subscribe to the channel Sluggers Blue for your CAD VRZ preparation. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.